Karen Martinez sat in the back of the ambulance, an ice pack pressed to her swollen leg, while paramedic Sarah Chen checked her vitals. The irony of sharing a last name with her nemesis wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Karen, who kept shooting. Venomous glares toward David's house. Blood pressures elevated, but that's expected given the circumstances, Sarah reported to her partner. No obvious fractures, but she'll need x-rays to be sure. I don't need x-rays, Karen snapped. I need that man arrested for reckless endangerment. Sarah exchanged a look with her partner, Tom Rodriguez, Captain Rodriguez's younger brother. As it happened, the Martinez-Chen feud was already becoming legendary among the first responders. You should really let us take you to the hospital. I'm fine, Karen insisted, though her leg was clearly causing her significant pain. What I need is for someone to do something about that psychopath who nearly killed me. Judge. Martinez was having his own conversation with Captain Rodriguez, 20 feet away. David could see the judge's carefully controlled facade beginning to crack as the reality of the situation sank in. Captain, I need to understand the liability issues here, the judge was saying. My wife was injured on his property. There are clear negligence concerns. Your Honor, with respect, your wife was trespassing. Mr. Chen has video evidence, and... Rodriguez glanced around at the news cameras. This is going to be a matter for the attorneys. Janet Morrison chose that moment to thrust her microphone toward the judge. Your Honor, Channel 12 News. How do you respond to allegations that your wife was trespassing and committed property damage? Judge Martinez's face went through several color changes. No comment. But sir, Mr. Chen claims he has security footage of your wife throwing a brick through his window. Surely you'd want to clear that up. The judge looked like a man watching his career flash before his eyes. I said no comment. David stepped forward, his phone still recording. Actually, I'd like to make a comment. Rodriguez grabbed his arm again. Don't do this. No, I think it's time people understood what really happened here. David addressed the camera directly. At 2:30 p.m., Karen Martinez threw a brick through my kitchen window. At 2:35, she and her friends invaded my backyard with 7 children, using my pool without permission, drinking my beer, and treating my property like their personal resort. When I asked them to leave, she screamed that it was a public pool and refused to go. When I threatened to call police, she threatened me with her husband's judicial position. And when I called 911 anyway, she got herself stuck in my fence while having a hysterical meltdown. Morrison's eyes lit up. This was better than she'd hoped. Do you have all of this on video? Every second. Including the brick throwing. David smiled grimly. I have security cameras covering every inch of my property. 4 different angles, all time-stamped, all uploading to cloud storage in real time. The judge's face went ashen. Karen, who had been listening from the ambulance, started screaming again. He's lying. I never threw any brick. Then you won't mind if we check the footage, David called back. There is no footage. You're making it up. David pulled out his phone and started navigating to his security app. Well, let's see about that. No. Karen lurched out of the ambulance, nearly falling as her injured leg buckled. Don't you dare. Paramedic Sarah caught her arm. You need to sit back down. He's doctoring the evidence. He's a computer person. He can fake anything. Judge Martinez was watching this exchange with the growing horror of a man who just realized his wife was digging their grave. Deeper with every word. Karen, he said quietly. Stop talking. I won't stop talking. This man nearly killed me. Karen, stop talking. The authority in his voice finally penetrated her hysteria. She closed her mouth, but her eyes continued darting between David's phone and the news cameras like a trapped animal. David, meanwhile, had pulled up his security footage. The app showed 4 camera feeds, each with a timestamp showing 2:30 p.m. He angled the phone so the news camera could see the screen. Here we go, he said. Camera 1, south side of the house. 2:30 p.m. exactly. The footage was crystal clear. Karen Martinez, standing in David's driveway, picking up a landscaping brick from his decorative border, drawing her arm back, hurling it at his kitchen window with considerable force. The sound of the glass breaking was audible even through the phone's small speaker. Morrison leaned in closer to the phone screen. "Can you replay that?" "Absolutely." David rewound the footage and played it again. Then a third time from a different camera angle that showed Karen's face clearly as she committed what was unmistakably criminal mischief. The crowd had gone dead silent. Even Tyler had stopped sniffling and was staring at the phone with wide eyes. Judge Martinez looked like he might be having a heart attack. That's not, Karen started to speak, then seemed to realize there was literally nothing she could say. The evidence was right there, in high definition, from multiple angles, with timestamps. Morrison said, turning to Karen. "Do you want to comment on this footage?" Karen's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. Officer Jessica Williams of the Phoenix Police Department chose that moment to arrive. She'd been dispatched on the original trespassing call but had been delayed by a traffic accident. Now she surveyed the scene: fire trucks, ambulances, news crews, and what appeared to be a family of rich people in the middle of a complete meltdown. "Someone called in a trespassing complaint?" she asked Rodriguez. "That would be me," David said, walking over. "David Chen. These people invaded my property and refused to leave when asked. I have video evidence of the entire incident, including property damage." Officer Williams looked around at the crowd, the cameras, and the obviously expensive vehicles in the Martinez driveway. This was exactly the kind of call that ended up on the evening news and the police chief's desk. "Sir, I'm going to need to see that video evidence." David showed her the security footage. Williams watched the brick-throwing incident 3 times, making notes in her pad. She called to Karen. "I need to speak with you." Karen was back in the ambulance, but she could hear perfectly well. "I want a lawyer." "That's your right. But I need to inform you that you're being charged with criminal mischief in the 3rd degree and criminal trespassing." The judge finally found his voice. "Officer, surely we can handle this as a civil matter." "No, sir, we can't. I have clear video evidence of crimes being committed. This isn't a neighbor dispute anymore." Morrison was practically vibrating with excitement. A federal judge's wife being arrested on camera was the kind of story that won Emmy Awards. "Your Honor," she called out, "do you have any comment on your wife being charged with criminal offenses?" Judge Martinez looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and die. "My wife will be represented by counsel, and we are confident that, Rick." Karen screamed from the ambulance. "Do something. You're a judge. Make them stop." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone, the firefighters, the police, the neighbors, the news crew, was staring at Karen Martinez, who had just demanded that her husband use his judicial position to interfere with a criminal investigation. On camera, in front of witnesses, with audio being recorded by multiple news outlets. Officer Williams' pen stopped moving. She looked up from her notepad with the expression of someone who just witnessed something that would require a lot of paperwork and probably a call to internal affairs. She said carefully. "Are you asking your husband to use his position as a federal judge to interfere with this investigation?" Karen seemed to realize what she'd said. Her face went white, then red, then a sickly green color. I didn't. I mean, because that would constitute obstruction of justice, which is a federal crime." Judge Martinez stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Officer, my wife is clearly distraught and injured. She doesn't know what she's saying." "Oh, I think she knows exactly what she's saying," Morrison interjected, her microphone capturing every word. "Your Honor, is it true that your wife just asked you to use your judicial authority to stop a criminal investigation?" The judge's career was evaporating in real time. Judicial ethics rules were crystal clear about using one's position for personal benefit. The mere appearance of impropriety was enough to trigger a formal review. And Karen had just created much more than an appearance. Tyler Martinez, who had been watching this adult meltdown with the confused terror of a child whose world was falling apart, finally spoke up. "Mommy," he said in a small voice, "why did you throw the rock at the nice man's window?" The kid's innocent question cut through the chaos like a knife. Here was a 7-year-old who understood the basic concept of not throwing rocks at people's houses, while his mother, a grown woman married to a federal judge, had apparently never learned that lesson. Karen looked at her son, then at the cameras, then at her husband's devastated face. Something seemed to break inside her. Because he wouldn't share, she screamed. Because he's selfish and mean and I hate him. And with that declaration, delivered at maximum volume in front of news cameras and police officers, Karen Martinez managed to confess to criminal mischief while simultaneously demonstrating that she had the emotional maturity of A2. The Phoenix Fire Department arrived with the kind of overwhelming response typically reserved for building collapses and chemical spills. 2 fire trucks, an ambulance, a rescue unit, and what appeared to be every off-duty firefighter in a 20-mile radius descended on David's quiet suburban street like an invading army. Captain Miguel Rodriguez jumped down from the first truck, taking in the scene with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen every possible way humans could get themselves into trouble. A woman hanging from a decorative fence, screaming her head off. A crowd of parents and children clustered around a backyard pool. A man in a software engineer's uniform holding a phone like it might explode. "Sir, I need you to step back," Rodriguez told David, his voice carrying the authority of 2 decades fighting fires and extracting idiots from impossible situations. "She was trespassing," David said immediately. "I asked her to leave multiple times. I have it all on video." He held up his phone, where he'd been recording since the moment Karen started screaming about public pools. Rodriguez nodded but didn't respond. He'd learned long ago that property disputes were lawyer problems, not firefighter problems. His job was to get people down from fences, not sort out who was right or wrong. He called up to Karen, who was still suspended horizontally, her leg wedged between 2 ornate iron bars. "I'm Captain Rodriguez with Phoenix Fire. We are going to get you down, but I need you to stop moving and listen to my instructions." "Get me down now." Karen shrieked. "I'm going to fall." "No, you're not going to fall. The fence is supporting. Your weight just fine. But if you keep thrashing around, you could make the situation worse." Rodriguez turned to his crew. "Jensen, get the spreaders. Williams, I want the high-angle kit set up. Martinez, call for a structural engineer. Need to know how much stress this fence can take." Tyler Martinez was still crying, standing in a growing puddle of pool water while his mother hung 3 feet away from him. The brunette woman, who Rodriguez learned was named Lisa Brennan, had wrapped the boy in a towel and was trying to comfort him, but every time Karen screamed, Tyler wailed louder. "Maybe we should take the children inside," Lisa suggested to David. "Absolutely not," David replied firmly. "Nobody else is going in my house. They're just kids. They're trespassers. All of you. I want you off my property the moment she's down." Rodriguez could feel the tension crackling between the adults like electricity before a storm. This wasn't just about someone getting stuck in a fence. This was about something deeper, uglier, and probably heading straight for court. The second fire truck had positioned itself strategically, its ladder extended toward Karen's position. Firefighter Williams was setting up a complex system of ropes and pulleys that would distribute her weight evenly during the extraction. "How long is this going to take?" Karen demanded, her voice hoarse from screaming. "Depends on how cooperative you are," Rodriguez replied. "We need to spread these bars apart just enough to slide your leg out, but if you panic and twist the wrong way, you could break something." "I want to call my husband." We need to focus on getting you down safely. I want to call my husband right now." Lisa fumbled for her phone. "I'll call Rick," she told Karen. "What's his number?" While Lisa dialed, Rodriguez caught David's arm and pulled him aside. "What exactly happened here?" David launched into the story: the trespassing, the entitled behavior, Karen's escalating hysteria, the way she'd gotten herself tangled up in the fence while trying to rescue her son from a situation that wasn't dangerous. "You got all this on video?" Rodriguez asked. "Every second since she started screaming about it being a public pool." Rodriguez nodded grimly. He'd worked enough domestic calls to recognize a lawsuit brewing. Rich people with lawyers and poor impulse control were his least favorite combination. "Sir." Firefighter Jensen called out. "We've got a problem." Rodriguez jogged back to the fence line. Jensen was examining the ornate metalwork with a flashlight, his expression troubled. "What is it?" "This isn't just decorative iron," Jensen said. "Look at this scrollwork pattern. Her leg isn't just caught, it's wedged in at an angle that's creating a mechanical lock. Every time she moves, it tightens the grip." Rodriguez studied the situation more carefully. Karen's right leg was threaded through a complex series of curves and twists in the fence's design. The metal formed an almost perfect spiral around her calf, and her own body weight was keeping it locked in place. So we can't just spread the bars. We could, but we risk crushing her leg. The metal would have to bend in 3 different directions simultaneously. From his position by the fence, Rodriguez could hear Lisa's phone conversation with Judge Martinez. "Rick, you need to get home right now." "Yes, she's stuck in the fence." "No, I don't know how. The fire department is here." She was trying to. Lisa's voice dropped to a whisper. She was screaming at the neighbor about the pool. Rodriguez watched Lisa's face go pale as she listened to whatever Judge Martinez was saying on the other end. "Okay," Lisa said finally. "Okay, I'll tell them. He's on his way." She hung up and looked around at the growing crowd of firefighters, neighbors, and gawkers. Rick said nobody talks to the media. No statements, no interviews, nothing. "Little. Late for that," David muttered, pointing to the growing collection of smartphones aimed at the scene. Half the neighborhood was recording, and Rodriguez could already see the local news van turning onto the street. Channel 12's aggressive field reporter, Janet Morrison, was climbing out of the van before it had fully stopped, her cameraman right behind her. Rodriguez cursed under his breath. Morrison was the kind of journalist who turned routine rescues into 3-day media circuses. "Captain Rodriguez." Morrison called out, microphone already in hand. "Janet Morrison, Channel 12 News. Can you tell us how this woman became trapped in the fence?" No comment. Rodriguez replied automatically. "Is it true that this is a neighborhood dispute over pool access?" David stepped forward before Rodriguez could stop him. "It's true that this woman was trespassing on my property and got herself stuck when I asked her to leave." "Sir, can you tell us your name?" "David Chen. I'm an engineer, I pay my taxes, and I have the right to use my own property without being invaded by entitled neighbors." Rodriguez grabbed David's arm. "Don't talk to the media. Trust me on this." But it was too late. Morrison had everything she needed: a clear villain, David, a clear victim, Karen, and the kind of suburban drama that would play perfectly on the evening news. "Mrs. Martinez," Morrison called up to Karen, "how are you feeling right now?" "I'm hanging from a fence." Karen screamed back, "How do you think I'm feeling? Were you using Mr. Chen's pool without permission? It's 112 degrees. Children could die in this heat." Morrison turned back to her cameraman, a satisfied smile on her face. This was going to be ratings gold. Williams approached Rodriguez with the high-angle equipment. "Captain, we are ready to attempt extraction, but..." "But what?" "The structural engineer says this fence is anchored with concrete footings that go down 4 feet. It's not going anywhere. But if we apply too much lateral pressure trying to free her leg, we could snap the bones." Rodriguez looked up at Karen, who was starting to show signs of exhaustion. Her face was flushed, sweat was pouring down her forehead, and her grip on the fence bars was getting weaker. "How long has she been hanging there?" 47 minutes. That was approaching the danger zone. Karen wasn't young, she wasn't in great shape, and her circulation was being restricted by the position of her leg. They needed to get her down soon, or they'd be dealing with more than just wounded pride. Rodriguez called up to Karen. "We are going to try something different. I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say. Just get me down. We are going to support your body weight with a harness, and then we are going to try to rotate your leg counterclockwise. It should release the mechanical lock." "What if it doesn't work?" Rodriguez exchanged glances with Williams. "If it didn't work, they'd have to cut the fence apart with power tools, and that would take hours. Hours that Karen might not have." "It's going to work," he said with more confidence than he felt. The harness operation took 20 minutes to set up. Williams and Jensen working with mechanical precision while Karen grew progressively weaker. Tyler had stopped crying and was now just staring up at his mother with the kind of wide-eyed shock that would probably require therapy. Judge Richard Martinez's black BMW pulled into the driveway just as the firefighters were ready to attempt the extraction. He was exactly what David had expected: tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars, and radiating the kind of quiet authority that came from decades of having people stand when he entered a room. He took one look at the scene, his wife hanging from David's fence, news cameras rolling, firefighters swarming his neighbor's backyard, and his face went through several interesting expressions. "Captain," he said to Rodriguez, his voice carefully controlled. "What's the situation?" "We are about to attempt extraction, Your Honor." Another few minutes. Judge Martinez nodded, then turned to David with the kind of look that had probably terrified defendants for 30 years. "Mr. Chen, I presume." "That's right. We need to talk. After your wife is down and off my probe." 3 days after Karen Martinez's arrest, David Chen woke up to find a City of Phoenix code enforcement officer standing in his driveway with a clipboard and a very serious expression. "Mr. Chen, I'm Inspector Dale Morrison with Code Enforcement. We've received several complaints about violations on your property." David stepped outside, still in his pajamas and bathrobe, squinting in the morning sun. "What kind of violations?" Morrison consulted his clipboard. "Pool safety violations, fence height violations, unpermitted structures, noise ordinance violations, water usage violations, and..." He flipped a page, "improper storage of construction materials." "That's impossible. My pool is up to code. My fence was professionally installed with permits, and I don't have any construction materials." "We'll see about that." Morrison walked toward the backyard like he owned the place. "I'll need to conduct a full inspection." David followed, a sick feeling growing in his stomach. This wasn't a coincidence. This was retaliation. Morrison spent 2 hours going over every inch of David's property with the dedication of someone looking for specific problems. He measured the fence height with a laser tool. He tested the pool's safety equipment. He examined the electrical connections to the pool pump. He even counted the number of decorative stones in David's landscaping. "Well," Morrison said finally, "I'm afraid I'm going to have to issue several citations." "For what?" "Your fence exceeds the maximum allowable height by 3 inches. Your pool pump is generating noise levels above the residential limit. And these decorative stones constitute unpermitted hardscaping that alters the natural drainage of your lot." David stared at him. 3 inches. The noise level? The stones were here when I bought the house 5 years ago. Doesn't matter. Violations are violations. Morrison tore off several carbon copy forms and handed them to David. "You have 30 days to bring everything into compliance, or the city will begin daily fines of $500 per violation." David looked at the citations. The total cost of bringing everything into compliance would be close to $15,000. The fence would have to be rebuilt. The pool pump would need to be replaced with a whisper-quiet model. The landscaping would have to be torn up and regraded. "This is harassment," David said. Morrison shrugged. "This is code enforcement. Have a nice day, Mr. Chen." As Morrison drove away, David noticed Mrs. Patterson from across the street watching. From her window, she'd lived in the neighborhood for 20 years and had never seen a code enforcement inspection like that. David waved at her, and she hurried over. "David, honey, what was that all about?" "Apparently, my property is a dangerous menace to society." Mrs. Patterson looked confused. "But your yard is beautiful. It's the nicest one on the block. Tell that to the city." "You know," Mrs. Patterson said thoughtfully, "I've lived here since this neighborhood was built. I've never seen code enforcement do random inspections. Usually they only come out when someone files a complaint." Someone filed a complaint. Multiple complaints, from what I heard. Very detailed ones. Like, whoever filed them knew exactly what to look for. David felt his blood pressure rising. "Did you see who filed them?" Mrs. Patterson glanced toward the Martinez house, then back at David. "I didn't see anything, but I heard Judge Martinez has been making a lot of phone calls since his wife's incident." That afternoon, David called his insurance company to report the broken window and get an estimate for repairs. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen," the claims adjuster said, "but we can't process this claim." "Why not?" "Your policy was cancelled yesterday." David nearly dropped the phone. "Cancelled? I've been with you for 8 years. I've never filed a claim." "Yes, sir, but we received a report that you're operating an unpermitted business from your residence. Commercial activities void your residential policy. What commercial activities? I work from home as a software engineer. According to the report, you're running an illegal swimming pool rental service. Multiple witnesses reported seeing large groups of people using your pool for parties. David felt like he was losing his mind. Those were trespassers. I called the police. I have video evidence. I'm sorry, sir, but once a cancellation is processed, it's very difficult to reverse. You'll need to find a new carrier. David spent the next 3 hours calling insurance companies. Every single one declined to cover him. Apparently, word had spread through the industry that David Chen was a high-risk property owner with ongoing legal issues and neighbor disputes. By Thursday, things got worse. David's home internet was cut off. When he called the service provider, they claimed his account had been flagged for suspicious activity and was under investigation for copyright violations and illegal downloading. His credit cards were frozen pending fraud investigation after someone reported unusual spending patterns on his accounts. The IRS sent him a letter announcing an audit of his last 3 years of tax returns, citing anonymous tips about unreported income. And the Arizona State Bar Association informed him that someone had filed a complaint alleging he was practicing law without a license because he'd given legal advice to neighbors about property disputes. David wasn't even a lawyer. On Friday morning, David found Tyler Martinez sitting on his front steps, crying. "Hey buddy," David said gently, sitting down next to the kid. "What's wrong?" "Mommy's gone," Tyler said between sobs. "Daddy says she had to go away for a while because of what happened at your house." David's heart broke a little. Whatever else Karen Martinez was, she was still this kid's mother. "I'm sorry, Tyler. I know you miss her. Are you going to send Daddy away too?" The question hit David like a punch to the gut. "What? No, buddy. Why would you think that?" "Because Daddy's been really angry and making lots of phone calls about you. And when adults make angry phone calls, bad things happen." Out of the mouths of babes. This 7-year-old had figured out what David was just beginning to understand. Judge Martinez was using every connection, every favor, every bit of influence he had to systematically destroy David's life. "Tyler," David said carefully, "has your dad said anything about me? About what he's going to do?" Tyler nodded, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "He said you ruined our family and you're going to pay for it. He said he knows people who can make problems for you, and you'll be sorry you ever moved here." David felt a chill run down his spine. A federal judge threatening a private citizen was serious business, but proving it would be nearly impossible, especially when the threats were being made through intermediaries and bureaucratic channels. "Tyler, if your dad asks what we talked about, I won't tell," Tyler said quickly. "I'm good at keeping secrets. Mommy taught me." That evening, David was in his kitchen making dinner when he saw the news van pull up outside. Janet Morrison climbed out, followed by her cameraman. David opened the door before she could knock. "Mr. Chen," Morrison said, "we'd like to get your reaction to the latest developments in the Martinez case." "What developments?" "You haven't heard. The district attorney announced this morning that all charges against Karen Martinez are being dropped." David felt the world tilt sideways. "Dropped? Why?" "Insufficient evidence, according to the DA's office. They claim the video footage you provided was inconclusive and that there's reasonable doubt about Mrs. Martinez's intent when she threw the brick." "Inconclusive? You saw the footage. Everyone saw it." "Yes, but apparently the DA doesn't think it would hold up in court. They're saying it could have been an accident, that maybe Mrs. Martinez was trying to throw the brick over your house, not at it." David stared at her. "That's insane. Nobody throws a brick over someone's house by accident." "I agree. But the DA is an elected official, and Judge Martinez has a lot of friends in this town." Morrison held up her microphone. "Would you like to comment on the record about these charges being dropped?" David looked at the camera, then at his house with its code violation notices taped to the door, then at the Martinez mansion next door, where Judge Martinez was probably watching from behind his curtains. "Yeah," David said. "I have a comment." He looked directly into the camera lens. "Judge Richard Martinez is abusing his position to cover up his wife's crimes and punish me for defending my property rights. In the last week, I've been hit with bogus code violations, had my insurance cancelled, my credit frozen, and I'm being audited by the IRS. All because I wouldn't let his wife turn my backyard into her personal playground. Morrison's eyes lit up. This was the kind of accusation that could bring down a federal judge if it could be proven. Those are serious allegations, Mr. Chen. Do you have evidence? The evidence is the pattern. 7 different government agencies suddenly have problems with David Chen? All in the same week? After his wife is arrested for criminal mischief? Either I'm the unluckiest man in Arizona, or somebody with a lot of connections is pulling strings. David stepped closer to the camera. Judge Martinez thinks he can destroy my life and get away with it because he wears a robe and sits behind a bench. But I've got news for him. I'm not going away quietly. I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to expose every dirty trick he's pulled. As Morrison wrapped up the interview and the news crew drove away, David noticed Judge Martinez's BMW pulling into his driveway. The judge sat in his car for a long moment, starry. The screaming started at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that would destroy 2 families forever. Karen Martinez thought she owned the world, until her precious son got trapped between the wrought iron bars of my fence, suspended 3 feet above concrete, while she stood frozen in horror. What she didn't know was that I'd been recording everything. What I didn't know was that her husband was a judge. And what neither of us knew was that the real nightmare was just beginning. The first brick hit David Chen's kitchen window at exactly 2:30 p.m. He looked up from his laptop, squinting through the glass at the chaos erupting in his backyard. 7 kids were running wild around his pool on his property, while their parents lounged on his deck chairs, drinking what appeared to be his beer from his refrigerator. What the hell? David muttered, pushing back from his home office desk. He'd been battling a software bug for 3 hours, and the last thing he needed was his new neighbors treating his property like their personal resort. He walked outside, the Arizona heat hitting him like a physical blow. The temperature gauge on his patio read 112 degrees, but that didn't stop the Martinez family from making themselves completely at home. "Excuse me," David called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "I think there's been some confusion." Karen Martinez looked up from her phone, designer sunglasses reflecting the harsh desert sun. She was exactly what David had expected when he'd first seen the McMansion going up next door: perfectly highlighted blonde hair, yoga pants that cost more than most people's rent, and the kind of entitled smirk that suggested she'd never heard the word no in her adult life. "Oh, hi there," she called back, not moving from his lounge chair. "Thanks for letting us use your pool. The kids were dying in this heat." David blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The pool," Karen repeated, gesturing vaguely at the crystal clear water, where her 7-year-old son Tyler was doing cannonballs. "It's so nice to have neighbors who share. Very community-minded of you." "I never said you could use my pool." Karen's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Well, of course you did. My husband Rick mentioned it when he talked to you last week about the fence." David's jaw tightened. Rick Martinez had indeed approached him. About the fence, specifically, about how David's 6-foot privacy fence was blocking their view and needed to come down. David had politely but firmly declined, explaining that the fence was entirely on his property and wasn't going anywhere. "Your husband asked me to remove my fence," David said slowly. "I told him no." At no point did anyone discuss pool access. The other parents, 2 couples David didn't recognize, were starting to pay attention now. The kids continued splashing, oblivious to the growing tension. Karen stood up from the lounge chair, all 5 feet of her radiating indignation. "Look, I don't know what your problem is, but it's 112 degrees out here. You can't seriously expect us to keep the kids locked inside on a day like this." "I expect you to use your own pool," David replied, "or a public pool, or literally anywhere that isn't my private property." "Our pool isn't finished yet," Karen snapped. "The contractors are behind schedule, and the nearest public pool is 20 minutes away." "That sounds like a you problem." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Karen's face went through several interesting color changes before settling on a dangerous shade of red. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You heard me. Your pool construction delays and your unwillingness to drive to a public facility don't give you the right to trespass on my property." One of the other mothers, a brunette in a sun hat, cleared her throat. Maybe we should go, Karen. If he doesn't want us here. No, Karen cut her off sharply. Absolutely not. This is ridiculous. She turned back to David, planting her hands on her hips. Do you even have kids? That's irrelevant. It's completely relevant. You clearly don't understand what it's like to be a parent, to have children depending on you to keep them safe and cool and, lady, I don't care if you have 15 kids. Get off my property. Now. Karen's mouth fell open. For a moment, David thought she might actually comply. Then her expression hardened into something ugly and determined. It's a public pool, she screamed, her voice carrying across the entire neighborhood. You can't just hoard water when children are suffering. Several windows opened in nearby houses. David could see curtains twitching, phones probably recording. Great. Now he was going to be the villain in someone's viral video. It's not a public pool, he said, fighting to keep his voice level. It's my pool, on my property, that I pay for and maintain. You have exactly 60 seconds to gather your things and leave, or I'm calling the police. The police? Karen laughed, but there was a hysterical edge to it. You're going to call the police on children? On innocent children trying to cool off? I'm going to call the police on trespassers who refuse to leave when asked. Tyler Martinez chose that moment to attempt an elaborate dive that went spectacularly wrong. He hit the water at an awkward angle, came up sputtering and crying, and immediately started wailing for his mother. See? Karen shrieked, rushing toward the pool. See what you've done. You've traumatized him. David rubbed his temples. This was exactly the kind of suburban nightmare he'd tried to avoid by buying a house with a large lot and good fences. But apparently, good fences only worked if your neighbors had a functioning moral compass. Tyler's fine, he said. Kids fall in pools all the time. But this is exactly why I don't you dare. Karen whirled on him, water dripping from her yoga pants where she'd knelt by the pool edge. Don't you dare blame my son for your selfishness. The other parents were gathering their things now, clearly uncomfortable with how quickly the situation had escalated. The man in the polo shirt, presumably someone's husband, was herding the other children toward the gate. Karen, the brunette said gently, maybe we should just go to the community center pool. It's really not that far. No. Karen's voice cracked like a whip. I am not driving across town because this, she gestured wildly at David. This selfish prick won't share. Tyler had stopped crying and was now watching his mother with wide, frightened eyes. The other kids had gone silent too, sensing the adult drama unfolding around them. David pulled out his phone. That's it. I'm calling the police. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. He started dialing. Karen's face went white, then red, then an alarming shade of purple. Put that phone away right now. You need to calm down. Don't you dare tell me to calm down. Do you know who my husband is? Here it comes, David thought. The threat. The connection. The reason she thought she could do whatever she wanted. I don't care if your husband is the Pope, he said. You're trespassing. My husband is Judge Richard Martinez of the Ninth Circuit Court. Karen shrieked. He could have you arrested for harassment. For child endangerment. David paused with his finger over the call button. A federal judge. Of course. That explained the McMansion, the entitled attitude, the complete lack of boundaries. Then I guess we'll let the police sort it out, he said, and pressed call. Karen's eyes went wild. She looked around frantically, as if searching for something, anything, that would give her back control of the situation. Her gaze landed on Tyler, still in the pool, and David could practically see the gears turning in her head. Tyler, she called out. Tyler, get out of there right now. This man is dangerous. The 7-year-old looked confused. But Mom, I'm having fun. Get out now. Tyler started swimming toward the edge, but Karen was already moving. She grabbed one of David's pool nets, a long aluminum pole with a net attachment, and started jabbing it toward her son. Here, baby, grab this. Karen, what are you doing? The brunette asked. He can swim just fine. He's in danger. Karen screamed. This psychopath could hurt him. David watched in disbelief as Karen continued waving the pool net around, like some kind of weapon. Tyler had reached the pool edge and was trying to climb out, but his mother kept thrusting the net at him, making it impossible for him to get a grip on the ladder. Please stop, David said. You're making this harder. Don't tell me how to parent. She swung the pool net harder, and Tyler had to duck to avoid getting hit in the head. The motion threw Karen off balance, and she stumbled backward, directly, toward the fence line. The fence that separated David's property from the Martinez property was 6 feet of decorative wrought iron with pointed finials at the top. Beautiful, expensive, and completely immovable. David had installed it the previous year after his last neighbors had let their dogs use his lawn as a bathroom. Karen hit the fence hard, the pool net flying from her hands and clattering across the concrete. For a moment, she just stood there, stunned. Then she seemed to realize that everyone was staring at her, the other parents, the neighbors in their windows, David with his phone still in his hand. This is your fault, she screamed, pointing an accusatory finger at David. All of this is your fault. She spun around, looking for Tyler, who had finally managed to climb out of the pool and was standing dripping and confused near the shallow end. Tyler, come here right now. The little boy started walking toward her, but he was moving slowly, still shaken by his mother's bizarre behavior. Karen, apparently dissident,